Billionaire CEO hugged a poor girl by mistake, then everything changed. What if one single hug could change the course of two lives forever? When a powerful billionaire accidentally embraces a poor stranger in the middle of a stormy New York night, he never imagines that the touch he mistook for someone else would awaken something long buried inside him: love, guilt, and a secret he thought he'd never face again. Speech balloon. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to Mr. Valentino Stories, hit the like button, and tell us in the comments below. Do you believe one unexpected encounter can change your destiny forever? Rain hammered down on the streets of Manhattan like the sky was grieving. Midnight lights bled into puddles, painting the sidewalks in gold and blue. People hurried under umbrellas, their faces hidden, their hearts elsewhere. But not Ethan Cole. He stood outside the glass doors of the Cole Empire Tower, his expensive black suit soaked through, his jaw tight, his mind miles away. To the world, Ethan was the definition of power, the billionaire CEO who turned his father's crumbling company into a global empire. But to himself tonight, he was just a man on the edge of breaking. The news had hit hours ago: his mother was gone. And though he'd spent his life buying the world, he couldn't buy back her heartbeat. Inside his chest, a storm far louder than the rain brewed. He turned sharply, ignoring the driver calling after him, his polished shoes splashing through a puddle as he crossed toward the parking lot. The city blurred around him, honking cabs, flashing lights, strangers brushing by. Then suddenly, he saw her. A silhouette standing under a flickering street lamp, shivering in the rain, a small, fragile figure clutching a plastic bag close to her chest. Her coat was torn, her hair damp and wild. But it wasn't her condition that made him stop, it was her stance. Something about the way she hugged herself, like she was holding the world together. For a split second, through the haze of grief and exhaustion, he saw his mother. Without thinking, he walked toward her. Each step faster. The rain blurred his vision, his chest tightened, and by the time he reached her, he didn't think, he simply wrapped his arms around her. The girl froze. Her body stiffened in shock as his warmth engulfed her, his cologne cutting through the scent of wet asphalt and fear. She didn't know what to do: scream, push him off, or melt into the only hug she'd felt in months. Then she heard his whisper. "Mom. I'm sorry." Her lips parted, confused, trembling. This man, tall, soaked, trembling himself, held her as if she was someone he had loved and lost. His grip was desperate, trembling, almost broken. "Sir," she whispered, her voice soft, uncertain. "You've got the wrong person." Her words snapped him back. Ethan pulled away slowly, eyes widening as the illusion shattered. For a moment, he just stared at her, the poor girl with rain in her lashes and confusion in her dark eyes. Then realization dawned, and shame crawled up his throat. I'm sorry," he stammered, stepping back. I didn't mean to." "It's okay," she interrupted gently. Her voice wasn't defensive, nor angry. Just kind. And in that moment, her calmness disarmed him more than his own mistake. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice quieter now, the weight of the world suddenly pressing harder. She smiled faintly, though it didn't reach her eyes. "I've been better," she admitted. "But it's just rain. It'll dry." Something in her tone, the quiet endurance, the grace in pain, stirred something inside Ethan he didn't understand. "Do you have somewhere to go?" he asked before he could stop himself. Her gaze dropped to the wet ground. "Not really. I was hoping to get a night shift cleaning job at the diner down the street. But they said they're full." He hesitated, torn between walking away and staying, because everything about her felt strangely significant. "What's your name?" he asked softly. She hesitated, unsure if she should even answer. Then, finally, she said, "Naomi. Naomi Brooks." Ethan nodded slowly, his heart pounding for reasons he couldn't name. "Naomi," he repeated, as if trying to memorize the sound. "Listen, Naomi. I owe you an apology. I shouldn't have done that. But," he paused, "you look like you need help." Naomi shook her head, hugging her bag tighter. People don't just help strangers, sir. Ethan gave a small, broken laugh. Maybe they should. For a few moments, the world was quiet, just the rain, their breaths, and the distant hum of the city. Naomi finally said, "You don't even know me." He smiled faintly. "Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's the only reason I can help without judgment." There was something raw, human, in his tone, something Naomi hadn't heard in months of rejection, of sleeping on benches, of pretending she wasn't invisible. And maybe that's why, for the first time, she didn't walk away. If a stranger offered you kindness at your lowest point, would you accept it, or walk away, afraid it's too good to be true? Tell us in the comments what you think. That night, Ethan did something unthinkable for a man of his class. He offered Naomi a ride. She hesitated but eventually accepted, drawn by the softness in his eyes. Inside his sleek black Rolls-Royce, she sat stiffly, raindrops clinging to her lashes, her worn shoes leaving prints on the carpeted floor. Ethan didn't speak much. He just drove, silently, through the glittering city until they stopped in front of a 24-hour diner. "Come inside," he said quietly. "You look like you haven't eaten in days." Naomi opened her mouth to protest, then her stomach growled, betraying her. Ethan smiled faintly. "That settles it." Inside the warm glow of the diner, they sat in a corner booth. Naomi watched him, his tailored suit, his watch worth more than she'd made her entire life, and wondered why someone like him even noticed her. When the waitress left, Naomi finally asked, "Why did you hug me?" Ethan stared at his untouched coffee. "I lost someone," he said simply. "And for a second, I thought you were her." Naomi didn't press further. She just nodded, understanding that pain was a language the rich and poor both spoke fluently. The conversation that followed was quiet but full of unspoken warmth, the kind that lives between strangers who recognize the ache in each other's eyes. And as they talked, about nothing and everything, something inside Ethan softened. He didn't know that this night, this mistake, this hug, would be the beginning of everything he never knew he needed. Sometimes, the smallest act of compassion is the first step toward falling in love. The diner was almost empty. A jukebox in the corner hummed a soft 80s tune that melted into the quiet murmur of rain against the windows. Naomi sat across from Ethan, her hands cupped around a mug of hot cocoa she hadn't ordered but he had insisted on. The warmth seeped into her palms, thawing fingers that had forgotten what comfort felt like. Ethan watched her, silently, his mind running circles. He hadn't meant for this to happen, to sit across from a stranger who looked at him not with awe or calculation, but curiosity. Every woman in his world saw his bank account first, then his face. Naomi just saw him. She was trying to hide it, but he could see it, the exhaustion etched around her eyes, the hollow spaces hunger leaves behind. Yet somehow, she still smiled. That quiet resilience, it reminded him of something he'd lost. Or someone. Naomi broke the silence first. "So, you're really a CEO?" she asked, tracing a finger over the condensation on her mug. Ethan gave a faint smile. "I am. Ethan Cole. Cole Empire Holdings." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "Sounds fancy." He chuckled, a little embarrassed. "It's something like that. I've cleaned the windows of that building before," Naomi said softly. "Never thought I'd be sitting with the man who owns it." The words landed heavier than she intended. Ethan's gaze softened. "You cleaned windows?" "I used to," she said, staring at her reflection in the cocoa. "When I had the job. Before the company changed management." She gave a small, tired shrug. "Turns out, loyalty doesn't pay rent." Ethan felt something twist in his chest. Guilt, maybe. He didn't know if it was her specific company, but he'd seen too many like it, swallowed by corporate takeovers like his. "Naomi," he began carefully. "What happened after that?" Her voice dropped. "My mother got sick. Hospital bills piled up. I tried to keep up, but everything just fell apart." Her lips trembled as she tried to steady them. "She passed away last winter." Ethan's throat tightened. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. Naomi nodded. "You're not the first to say that. But you're the first to sound like you mean it." He looked down, unable to meet her eyes. "I lost my mother today." Her breath caught. "Today?" He nodded. "Heart failure. She was the only person who ever believed in me before the money." For a long time, they sat in silence. Not the awkward kind, the kind where words become unnecessary. Two people grieving different versions of the same loss. The waitress refilled their mugs, giving them a soft, curious glance. She'd seen enough late-night encounters to sense when something real was brewing. When she left, Naomi said, "You know, people like you don't usually talk to people like me." Ethan smiled faintly. "People like me don't usually meet people like you." Naomi tilted her head. "Meaning, he said, "you remind me that there's still good in the world." Her laugh was quiet but bright. "That's funny. You just hugged a stranger in the rain. I think you're the one proving that." He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in years, his chest didn't feel so heavy. They talked for hours. About her dreams, to one day open a bakery her mother always wanted. About his, to finally do something that mattered more than numbers. Naomi's honesty was disarming. She spoke with no filter, no pretense. And Ethan listened like every word mattered. When the diner clock struck 3 a.m., Naomi checked the time. "I should go," she murmured. "The shelter closes in 20 minutes. Ethan frowned. "You're staying at a shelter?" "Most nights, yeah. When there's space." "Then you're not going back there tonight," he said firmly. She blinked. "Excuse me." He leaned forward, his tone calm but decisive. "It's pouring outside, and you've barely eaten in days. You can stay in one of my guest rooms tonight. Just tonight. You'll be safe, and you can leave in the morning." Naomi stared at him. "You don't even know me." He met her gaze steadily. "Maybe not yet. But I know you deserve a dry bed." There was no pity in his tone, only sincerity, that, more than his wealth, made her hesitate. Her instincts screamed no. But something about the way he looked at her, not as a charity case, but as a person, quieted the noise. "Fine," she said finally. "Just for tonight." Outside, the city was asleep. Ethan opened the car door for her, and she climbed in cautiously. The interior smelled like leather and cedar, foreign but comforting. The world outside looked different through tinted glass, gentler, maybe. For the first time in months, she didn't feel like she was surviving. She was being seen. When they reached his penthouse, Naomi couldn't hide her awe. The glass walls looked out over the skyline, Manhattan glowing beneath them like a constellation. Ethan watched her reaction, not with pride, but with quiet fascination. How strange that something he'd long stopped noticing could still take someone's breath away. "I'll get you something dry to wear," he said, moving toward the guest suite. "You can shower if you'd like." Naomi hesitated. "I don't want to mess anything up." He smiled. "You won't." When she disappeared into the bathroom, Ethan lingered in the hallway. The sound of running water echoed softly, mingling with the low hum of the city. For reasons he couldn't explain, that sound brought peace. It felt right. Naomi stepped out 15 minutes later, wrapped in one of his oversized shirts, her curls damp and glistening under the soft light. Ethan froze for a second, not because of her beauty, but because she looked so out of place and yet so right. "Thank you," she said, her voice smaller now. "For the food. The ride. The everything." "You don't have to thank me." She smiled faintly. "No one's done something like this for me in a long time." He looked down. "Maybe that's what needs to change." They talked again, softer this time. About life. About how loneliness feels heavier in luxury than in poverty. Naomi said something he'd never forget. "People think being poor means you have nothing. But sometimes, rich people are the ones starving, just for something real. Ethan didn't answer. He couldn't. The truth of it hit too deep. She fell asleep on the couch before she could finish her sentence. Ethan stood there, watching her breathing even out. For the first time since his mother's death, his heart slowed. He covered her with a blanket and whispered, "Good night, Naomi." The next morning sunlight spilled through the glass walls, painting the penthouse gold. Naomi stirred, momentarily disoriented. When she sat up, the first thing she saw was a steaming cup of coffee on the table beside her, a note tucked underneath. "Didn't want to wake you. Breakfast in the kitchen. E." She smiled, the kind that hurts your cheeks when you haven't used those muscles in a while. In the kitchen, she found pancakes, berries, and another note. "I have a meeting at 9. Stay as long as you need. There's a change of clothes in the guest room closet." Her chest tightened. No one had ever been this kind for no reason. It scared her more than cruelty ever had. Meanwhile, in his boardroom across town, Ethan couldn't focus. Every presentation felt empty. Every chart meaningless. All he could think about was a girl in his apartment who had reminded him what being human felt like. During lunch, his assistant, Graham, noticed his distraction. "Everything all right, sir?" Ethan blinked. "Yeah. Just thinking." Graham smirked. "That's new. You usually delegate the thinking." Ethan laughed softly. "Maybe I should start doing more of it." When he returned home that evening, he half expected Naomi to be gone. But she wasn't. She was standing by the window, watching the sunset bleed across the skyline, her hair catching the light like gold. "You're back," she said, smiling. "I was starting to think you'd disappeared," he said lightly. "I thought about it," she admitted. "But then I realized I don't have anywhere better to go." Ethan walked closer, his voice soft. "Then stay. At least until you figure out your next step." Naomi turned toward him slowly. "You really mean that?" He nodded. "Yes. You can stay as long as you need. No conditions." Her eyes searched his, wary but hopeful. "Why are you doing this?" He hesitated. "Because I think that hug wasn't a mistake." That night, as they shared dinner overlooking the glittering city, something unspoken passed between them, a warmth that neither dared name. For the first time in a long time, Ethan laughed freely. Naomi did too. And somewhere between laughter and silence, between pain and healing, their hearts began to whisper a truth neither was ready to speak. That a single mistaken hug had brought two broken souls home to each other. Do you believe people come into our lives by accident, or is every encounter written in destiny? Drop your thoughts below. We love reading your heart. Red Heart. When two hearts begin to heal in each other's presence, love doesn't announce itself, it simply happens. The days that followed moved like soft waves, calm on the surface, but pulling something deeper beneath. Naomi had settled into the rhythm of Ethan's penthouse, though she never stopped reminding herself that it was temporary. Every morning she helped the housekeeper, Lena, tidy up, even though Ethan had told her she didn't have to. Every evening, she found herself waiting by the glass wall as he came home, telling herself she was just being polite, not realizing she was beginning to anticipate the sound of his footsteps. Ethan, on the other hand, had never been so still. His life had always been noise, meetings, investors, flashing cameras, numbers. But now, there was quiet. A woman humming softly in his kitchen. The smell of cinnamon when she baked. The sound of her laugh echoing from the living room as she watched old reruns. And the strangest thing of all, he didn't want it to end. One evening, as golden dusk poured over the skyline, Ethan found Naomi on the balcony. She was barefoot, her curls dancing in the wind, her eyes lost in the glittering chaos of the city below. He leaned against the doorway. "Careful. The city has a way of hypnotizing people." Naomi smiled. "Maybe that's not such a bad thing. At least it makes you forget the noise inside your own head." He walked closer, his gaze soft. "You sound like you know a lot about noise." She laughed quietly. When you've spent nights sleeping beside subway vents, you learn that silence can be the loudest thing in the world. He didn't know what to say to that. So he didn't say anything, just stood beside her, both of them staring out at a world that felt too big and too fragile all at once. After a long pause, Naomi turned to him. "Why do you live so high up?" she asked. "Control," he admitted. "When you're up here, no one can touch you." She tilted her head. "And do you like that?" He hesitated, then shook his head slowly. "Not anymore." That confession lingered in the air. Delicate and honest. Naomi looked at him, really looked, and saw something in his eyes she hadn't noticed before, loneliness disguised as success. The following day, Ethan surprised her. He came home early, holding 2 paper bags. "I have a proposition," he said. Naomi raised a brow. "You sound like my landlord." He grinned. "Better. I sound like your spontaneous adventure partner." She blinked. "Adventure. Cooking," he said. "You mentioned your mother used to make cornbread that could make angels jealous. I want to try it." Naomi laughed. "You cook?" He feigned offense. "I'm capable." She crossed her arms. "Do you even own salt?" "Maybe," he said with mock seriousness. "We'll find out." The kitchen became a battlefield. Flour clouds, laughter, burnt sugar, and more failed attempts than either admitted. Ethan, usually so composed, ended up with batter on his sleeves and a grin that made Naomi's heart ache in a way she hadn't felt in years. At one point, she caught him looking at her, really looking. "What?" she asked, smiling shyly. He shook his head. "You're just different." "How so?" "You don't want anything from me. You just exist. And that feels new." Naomi's chest tightened. "That's because I don't need your world, Ethan. I just want peace." Their eyes held for a moment too long, the air thick with something unnamed, something neither dared acknowledge. Later that night, Ethan stood alone in his study, staring at a framed photo of his mother. He whispered, "You'd like her, Mom." Down the hall, Naomi sat by the window, writing in a tattered notebook, something she hadn't done since before her mother passed. She was writing about him, though she didn't know why. About the way he looked at the world, about how grief had carved something tender in him. She paused mid-sentence, her hand trembling slightly. "Don't be stupid," she murmured to herself. "He's a billionaire. You're just you." But her heart didn't listen. The next morning, she woke to find Ethan sitting on the couch with his laptop, frustration written across his face. "What's wrong?" she asked softly. He sighed. "The board. They want to push a layoff. Hundreds of workers." Her expression fell. "You're going to let them?" "I don't want to," he admitted, "but the shareholders don't lose sleep over families," she said quietly. "You do." Ethan looked up, meeting her steady gaze. "Naomi, what would you do?" She hesitated. "Find a way to make money without breaking people." He smiled faintly. "You make it sound easy." "It's not," she said. "But sometimes the right thing isn't easy." Something shifted inside him. He'd built empires with logic and strategy, but she was teaching him heart. That night, he canceled the layoff. His board was furious. But for the first time in years, he didn't care. Over dinner, Naomi found out what he'd done. "You really did that?" He nodded. "Your voice was in my head all day." She smiled, warmth blooming behind her ribs. "I didn't mean to influence a billionaire." He chuckled. "Maybe that's what I needed, someone who doesn't care about my title." Her smile faded slightly. "Ethan, what happens when people find out I'm here?" He hesitated. "What do you mean?" "Your friends, your staff, the media, they'll judge." He leaned closer. "Let them. I'm not ashamed of kindness." But Naomi looked away, uneasy. She'd learned that the world wasn't kind to people like her, not when they stepped into places they didn't belong. The next day, that truth came knocking. When Ethan left for work, Naomi decided to take a short walk. She wore one of Lena's old coats, blending in with the morning crowd. She didn't realize one of Ethan's employees, Julia, his executive assistant, spotted her leaving the building. Julia's eyes narrowed. She'd always admired Ethan, maybe even loved him in her own quiet, jealous way. Seeing a young black woman leaving his penthouse stirred something sharp inside her. By noon, whispers spread through the company halls. By evening, one of the tabloids had a photo, billionaire Ethan Caldwell's mystery woman. When Ethan came home that night, Naomi was sitting on the couch, the magazine open on the table. Her eyes glistened. Is this how it's always going to be? He froze, seeing the headline. Naomi, They called me a gold digger. They don't even know my name, Ethan. He clenched his jaw. I'll fix it. How? She said bitterly. You can't fix the way the world sees people like me. He stepped closer, his voice low but firm. Naomi, look at me. I don't care what they say. You didn't do anything wrong. Her eyes filled. You think it's that simple? You live above judgment, Ethan. I live under it. Silence hung heavy. He wanted to hold her, to say something that could erase the pain in her voice. But for the first time since they met, Naomi turned away from him. That night, the penthouse felt too quiet. Ethan sat in the dark, replaying her words. And Naomi, in the guest room, packed her few belongings. But when she reached for the door, she stopped. His jacket was draped over the chair where he'd left it earlier. There was something fragile about it, something that reminded her that he was just as lost in his own way. She sat back on the bed, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. The next morning, she didn't leave. She found Ethan in the kitchen, bleary-eyed, his shirt untucked. I couldn't sleep, he admitted. Neither could I, she whispered. He ran a hand through his hair. Naomi, I don't want you to go. Not because of what people say. She bit her lip. You don't understand. They'll destroy you, Ethan. They'll say you've lost control. He looked at her, raw and sincere. Maybe I already have, and maybe that's not such a bad thing. Her heart stuttered. He stepped closer. When I met you, I thought you were a mistake. But you're the only real thing I've felt in years. She inhaled sharply, her throat tightening. Ethan, don't. I'm not saying this to confuse you. I just need you to know, that hug, it saved me. Her eyes shimmered with tears. And it broke me open. They stood there, inches apart, silence pulsing like a heartbeat between them. Ethan lifted a hand, hesitating, then gently tucked a stray curl behind her ear. Naomi didn't pull away. I'm scared, she whispered. Me too, he said. But maybe that means it's real. For a moment, time stood still. Then Naomi stepped back, her voice trembling. I need air. He let her go, not because he wanted to, but because love sometimes means giving space to breathe. Naomi walked to the park where they'd first passed by each other days ago. The air was cold, the sky gray. She sat on a bench, staring at the people passing, couples laughing, hands intertwined. She wondered what it felt like to belong somewhere without fear. Ethan found her hours later, breathless. You left without your phone. She smiled faintly. You didn't have to come. I did, he said softly. Because wherever you go, I notice. She turned away, blinking fast. Ethan, this can't be real. He sat beside her. Maybe it's not supposed to be perfect. Maybe it's just supposed to be true. Have you ever met someone who made you question everything you thought you knew about love and worth? Share your story in the comments. Your truth might touch someone's heart. Sometimes love doesn't shout its arrival, it whispers through the cracks of two broken hearts. Ethan and Naomi sat on that park bench for what felt like hours. The wind danced between them, carrying the scent of roasted peanuts and autumn leaves. Neither spoke at first. They didn't need to. There was a quiet honesty in their silence. Two people who had been pretending not to feel something that had already taken root. Finally, Naomi broke the stillness. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. "People will talk." "Let them," Ethan replied. "They'll talk no matter what I do." Naomi turned toward him, eyes searching. "You really don't care what anyone says?" He smiled, not the charming CEO grin that lit up magazine covers, but something unguarded. "I care about truth. And the truth is, I feel more like myself when I'm with you than I ever have in any boardroom." Her breath caught. "Ethan." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You make me want to be human again." That sentence tore down the last bit of armor between them. They walked back to his car together. The city lights blinked like fireflies as they crossed the bridge, their reflections trailing in the water below. Naomi's hand brushed against his, accidentally at first, but neither pulled away. By the time they reached the penthouse, something had changed. The tension that once made her nervous now felt like gravity, soft, inevitable. Inside, Ethan poured them tea, the city glowing through the glass behind him. Naomi sat on the couch, clutching the warm mug in her hands. He spoke first. "I should tell you something." She looked up, wary. "Tomorrow I'm supposed to attend a gala," he said. "It's for the foundation I fund. They help women transition out of homelessness." Naomi blinked. "You never told me that." He shrugged. "I don't talk about it. Feels performative sometimes." She smiled. "You're doing good work. That matters." He hesitated. "Would you come with me?" Her eyes widened. "Ethan, I know. But I don't want to hide anymore." She shook her head. "It's your world. I don't belong there." He met her gaze. "You belong wherever you're seen, Naomi. And I see you." The next evening, the gala sparkled with chandeliers and soft jazz. Naomi stood by the entrance in a simple navy dress Ethan had insisted she accept, elegant but modest. The moment she walked in beside him, heads turned. Whispers rippled. Cameras flashed. Naomi felt her pulse race. But Ethan didn't let go of her hand. When one of the reporters called out, "Mr. Cole, who's your date tonight?" he simply smiled and said, "Someone who reminds me what purpose looks like." The room fell quiet. For the first time in her life, Naomi wasn't invisible. Later, away from the crowd, they slipped onto a balcony overlooking the river. The night air was crisp, the city shimmered beneath them. Naomi exhaled shakily. "That was terrifying." Ethan chuckled. "You handled it better than most executives." She leaned on the railing, eyes distant. "You really don't care, do you?" "I care," he said softly. "Just not about the wrong things." He stepped closer, the distance between them closing inch by inch. "You looked beautiful tonight," he murmured. Naomi laughed nervously. "You're just saying that because I survived the reporters." "I'm saying it because it's true." She turned toward him, her heart pounding. "Ethan." "Yes. I don't know how to do this." "Do what?" "Let someone in without expecting them to leave." He reached out, brushing his thumb lightly over her wrist, a gesture so tender it made her tremble. "Then don't let me all the way in yet," he said. "Just don't close the door." Her breath shivered. "You make it sound easy." "It isn't," he admitted. "But you're worth the work." And before either of them could think, he leaned forward, slow, hesitant, giving her every chance to turn away. She didn't. Their lips met in a soft, fleeting kiss, the kind that didn't ask for forever, only a moment of truth. When they parted, Naomi's eyes glistened. "You shouldn't have done that." He smiled faintly. "Maybe. But I don't regret it." That night, she stood by the window long after he'd gone to bed, touching her lips as if the memory still lingered there. She thought of every wall she'd built to survive, every time she'd told herself love was a luxury for other people. But this man had reached through the cracks and found her anyway. Down the hall, Ethan lay awake too. His mind spun with questions he couldn't answer. What did it mean to fall for someone whose world was so different? Could love survive under the weight of scrutiny? But even with the uncertainty, one truth burned clear: he couldn't imagine his life without her presence in it. The next morning brought reality. Julia, his assistant, was waiting in his office, her expression sharp. "So it's true," she said coolly. "The woman from the tabloid, you brought her to a gala." Ethan set down his coffee. "Be careful, Julia. I'm just looking out for you. The board won't like this. Investors are already whispering that you're distracted." He met her gaze evenly. "Maybe I am. But I'd rather be distracted by something real than focused on an illusion." Julia's tone softened. "Ethan, you're risking everything for her." He smiled faintly. "Maybe she's the only thing worth risking it for." That evening, Naomi found him pacing the balcony. "You've been quiet," she said. He nodded. "The board's not happy. They think you're a liability." Her face fell. "Maybe they're right." "They're not," he said quickly. "You've given me clarity I didn't know I needed." Naomi's voice trembled. "Clarity doesn't pay shareholders, Ethan." He looked at her for a long time, then said softly, "Maybe I've been building the wrong kind of empire." Tears gathered in her eyes. "Why me?" "Because you see the man behind the title," he whispered. "And you make me want to deserve that man." She stepped forward, resting her forehead against his chest. "You make me believe love might not hurt this time." He wrapped his arms around her, holding her as if letting go would shatter him. "Then we'll make sure it doesn't." That embrace, quiet, trembling, and full of unspoken promises, became the turning point neither of them could undo. From that night on, their days wove together in small, tender ways. Morning coffee shared in silence, laughter over burnt pancakes, gentle teasing that softened into something deeper. But beneath the sweetness lingered a storm, because love, no matter how true, doesn't erase the world outside. Have you ever loved someone who changed your world when you least expected it? Tell me your story in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to Mr. Valentino Stories, where love always finds its way home. When the world finds something pure, it tries to burn it until it's sure it can't exist. The morning after the gala felt like sunlight breaking on glass, sharp, bright, dangerous. Naomi woke to the sound of her phone vibrating non-stop. Dozens of notifications stacked across the screen, unknown numbers, missed calls, messages from people she hadn't spoken to in years. She frowned, confused, until she opened one of the links. A headline in bold screamed across a gossip site. "Billionaire Ethan Cole spotted with mystery woman, former homeless girl turned lover?" Below it, photos from the gala, her hand in his, the look between them, his smile, captured as if through a sniper scope. Her stomach twisted. They'd taken something fragile and turned it into spectacle. Ethan's voice came from the kitchen. "Naomi." She wiped her eyes quickly and went to him. He was standing at the counter, phone pressed to his ear, jaw tight. "Yes, Julia, I've seen it," he said, pacing. "Tell the board I'll issue a statement later." He hung up and met Naomi's gaze. "It's everywhere." "I saw," she whispered. "I'll handle it," he promised. "Just don't look at any more of it." But she already had. The comments section was a graveyard of cruelty. "She's using him." Classic gold digger story. Pity project turned romance? How cliché. Naomi set the phone down as if it burned. "They make it sound like I planned this." He crossed the room, took her hands. "Let them talk. They don't know you." She looked up at him, eyes glistening. "But they know you. And I'm ruining your name." Ethan's grip tightened. "You could never ruin me." By noon, the story had metastasized. Television panels debated his moral lapse, investors whispered about distractions, and hashtags sprouted like weeds. Julia arrived at the penthouse with papers and a look of contained panic. "You need to get ahead of this," she said, sliding a folder across the table. "A press release distancing yourself from her." Ethan didn't even look at it. "No," Julia's jaw flexed. "Ethan, this isn't about pride. The stock dropped 3 points in an hour. The board is demanding a meeting." He looked out the window. The city sprawled beneath him, glittering and cruel. "They can demand all they want." Julia lowered her voice. "You can't protect her and the company at the same time." He turned. "Watch me." Naomi stood in the doorway, having heard every word. That night the penthouse felt smaller, the air heavier. Naomi sat curled on the couch, scrolling through more headlines even though she'd promised not to. A video clip replayed on loop, her face beside Ethan's as they left the gala, slowed, zoomed, dissected. Ethan joined her quietly. "I talked to the lawyers. They'll try to shut down some of the tabloids." She nodded without looking up. He reached to take the phone from her, gently. "Naomi, please." "I just wanted to see how bad it is," she murmured. "Turns out, it's bad." He sighed, sat beside her. "I've lived through scandals before. They fade." She turned to him. "But you've never lived through me." He blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means this one's personal. They'll dig. They'll find out where I came from." "So what if they do?" "You don't understand." Her voice cracked. "People like me don't get to make mistakes in public. We don't get second chances." Ethan took a slow breath. "Then I'll give you as many chances as you need." But the look in her eyes said she didn't believe the world would. The next day, the board meeting exploded like a storm. Ethan stood at the head of the glass-walled room while a dozen faces glared back at him. "Ethan," one director began, "your personal choices are bleeding into corporate reputation." Another added, "Our partners are uneasy. They question your judgment." A third, older man said bluntly, "End it. Publicly. Or we'll move for a temporary suspension." Ethan's hands tightened around the folder in front of him. "I built this company from nothing," he said evenly. "If you think I'll sell my soul to keep a few headlines clean, you've forgotten who I am." Julia watched him, worry carving lines in her forehead. "Ethan, please," she said softly. "Think of the employees who depend on you." He looked at her, then at the board. "I am thinking of them. And of the kind of world we teach them to build. One where empathy is punished and image is everything. I won't be that man." The room went silent. When he returned home, Naomi was gone. A note waited on the kitchen counter, written in her careful handwriting. "Ethan, I can't watch your world crumble because of me. You have a legacy to protect. Please don't look for me. N." His chest went hollow. For the first time in years, the walls around him felt like a cage. He called. No answer. Texted. Nothing. Then, desperate, he went out, driving through the night, retracing the streets where he'd first met her. Rain slicked the city. He stopped at the park bench, at the shelter she once mentioned, at the quiet coffee shop they'd stumbled into that first afternoon. No sign of her anywhere. Naomi had taken a bus to a small town 2 hours away, the kind of place where the internet's noise dulled into background static. She rented a room above a bakery and found work there, folding boxes, frosting cupcakes, trying to forget the sound of her name on the news. Each night, she watched the television in silence as the talking heads analyzed Ethan's fall from grace. His face looked tired, but his eyes, those eyes still searched for something off-screen. Sometimes she thought of calling. But what could she say? I'm sorry for loving you too much? I'm sorry the world hates that you did? 2 weeks passed. At dawn one morning, Naomi stepped outside the bakery to sweep the sidewalk. A newspaper fluttered against her foot. The headline froze her. Ethan Cole steps down as CEO, announces new foundation for homeless rehabilitation. She sank onto the steps, reading the article twice. He'd walked away. From everything. Tears blurred the words. Inside the bakery, her boss called, "Naomi, everything okay?" She wiped her face quickly. "Yeah. Just fine." But she wasn't fine. She was terrified, because the only thing scarier than losing Ethan was realizing he'd chosen her world over his. That evening, as the sun bled orange across the horizon, a familiar car pulled up outside the bakery. Ethan stepped out, raincoat slung over his arm, looking utterly human. No bodyguards, no chauffeur, no entourage. Just a man with tired eyes and something fragile in his smile. Naomi froze on the sidewalk. "What are you doing here?" "Looking for a reason not to regret anything," he said softly. She shook her head. "You shouldn't have come. I told you once I don't care what people say. I meant it. You gave up everything." "I gave up noise," he said. "What I found was peace." She stared at him, tears threatening again. "You can't just walk away from an empire for me." He stepped closer. "I didn't walk away for you, Naomi. I walked toward the life that made me feel alive. You just happened to be in it." She tried to speak, but the lump in her throat stopped her. Ethan took her hand. "I started a foundation," he said. "We're calling it Haven Rise. It'll build housing and job programs across the city. I wanted to ask if you'd help run it." Naomi blinked through her tears. "Me? You know that world better than anyone," he said. "You know what hope costs." She laughed through the tears. "Ethan Cole, the board will hate you forever." He smiled. "They already do." Then his voice softened. "Naomi, I don't care about titles anymore. But I can't do this, life, love, purpose, without you." Her answer came as a whisper, trembling but sure. "You never lost me. I was just waiting for you to find yourself." He pulled her into his arms, the smell of rain and sugar and forgiveness between them. The city lights blinked far away, but here in this small town, time stilled. Have you ever watched someone risk everything just to do what felt right? Would you have the courage to choose love over legacy? Share your thoughts below, and make sure you're subscribed to Mr. Valentino Stories, where love fights through every storm. Theme: redemption, healing, and eternal love. The night after the scandal broke was a silence too deep for sleep. Naomi sat on the floor of her tiny apartment, her hands around a mug that had long gone cold. Outside, the city buzzed with gossip. Her name, her face, her tears, everywhere. She'd turned off her phone, logged out of social media, and drawn the curtains tight. But the world's judgment still slipped through the cracks like cold wind. All she had left were her thoughts, and the echo of Ethan's voice that day at the courthouse. "Naomi, I love you. And I won't let this destroy you." She didn't believe him at first. She couldn't.